Maitreya said, when Lord Shiva heard from Narada that Sati, his wife, was now dead because of Prajapati Daksha's insult to her, and that his soldiers had been driven away by the Ribhu demigods, he became greatly angry. So Prabhupada's using the word greatly. The Sanskrit is apara, without limit. Not just a lot of anger, but a lot of anger. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Lord Shiva understood that Sati, being the youngest daughter of Daksha, could present the case of Lord Shiva's purity of purpose and would thus be able to mitigate the misunderstanding between Daksha and himself. But such a compromise was not attained, and Sati was deliberately insulted by her father by not being received properly when she visited his house without being invited. Sati herself could have killed her father, Daksha, because she is the personified material energy and has immense power to kill and create within this material universe. In the Brahma Samhita, her strength is described. She is capable of creating and dissolving many universes. But although she is so powerful, she acts under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, as his shadow. Does anyone know that verse? Shristi Siti Pralayasana Shaktireka Chayeva Yasyata Vibhakti Durga Ichtam Rupa Abhyasa Tatesa. So many times Prabhupada refers to verses like that without giving the whole translation, without giving the whole numbers. Going on with the purport, it would not have been difficult for Sati to punish her father. Think about this for a minute, because Daksha is the direct son of Lord Brahma. He's a pretty powerful person himself, but still his daughter Sati, being the material energy, she could easily have punished him. But she thought that since she was his daughter, it was not proper for her to kill him. So, just like we have Krishna kills Kamsa, because no one else could kill it, but Kamsa's brothers, Balaram killed it. Why? Because Kamsa was a relative. He was an uncle, and not so proper. So better Balaram killed the other ones. Going on. Thus she decided to give up her own body, which she had obtained from his, and Daksha did not even check her. So instead of killing Daksha, she killed a part of Daksha, which was herself. And Daksha didn't stop her. Can you imagine? Your daughter goes to commit suicide in front of you and you just stand there. Even we don't do that for strangers. If some stranger is going to jump off a bridge or something, we try to help them. Imagine if your own daughter, he was so hard-hearted, Prabhupada says. Going on, when Sati passed away, giving up her body, the news was conveyed by Narada to Lord Shiva. Narada always carries the news of such events because he knows their import. When Lord Shiva heard that his chaste wife Sati was dead, he naturally became exceedingly angry. He also understood that Bhrigu Muni had created the Ribhu demigods by uttering the mantras of the Yajurveda, and that these demigods had driven away all of his soldiers who were present in the arena of sacrifice. Because when Sati went to the sacrifice, she went without the invitation of her father, and she went without the permission of Lord Shiva also. But Lord Shiva sent soldiers to protect her. So not only did Daksha not stop the death of his daughter, but Bhrigu Muni drove away all of Lord Shiva's protectors. Going on, therefore, he wanted to reply to this insult, and thus he decided to kill Daksha because he was the cause of the death of Sati. Maitreya Uvacha Bhavo Bhavanya Nidanam Prajapatir Asat Kritaya Avagamya Nadadat Saparshada Sanyam Chatet Avarar Rubir Vidra Vitam Krodam Apara Adade. Maitreya said, when Lord Shiva heard from Narada that Sati, his wife, was now dead because of Prajapati's Daksha's insult to her, and that his soldiers had been driven away by the Ribhu demigods, he became greatly angry. So what time do we stop? 1:45. With questions. So like stop 8:30 and then. So Lord Shiva's getting the news. Narada is the messenger of the news. Used to be like that. How would you get news of a distant place? There would be some person come to the village, and they'd go like in the middle of the village, and they would, hear the news, hear the news. There was no newspapers long ago. There certainly was not internet. Right? So all of us are, today we're bombarded with news all the time. I mean, when I was a child, I remember when television started, and there were just 3 stations, only black and white, and only during working hours. At night, there was just a pattern on the screen. And every evening, like half an hour, there was news. And that was it. You know, now you have 24-hour news going, so many stations, so many points of view, the right wing and the left wing, and the super conservatives and the super liberals, and so many things. And we don't know even what's true and what's false. So Lord Shiva knew he could trust Narada. Narada was a trustworthy news source, but nowadays we have no idea. So in the 1980s, we were living in Detroit, Michigan, and we had purchased, ISKCON had purchased, by the grace of Ambarish and Lekha Shivanti, the Fisher Mansion. So that was big news, because Ambarish was in the Ford family, and Lekha Shivanti was in the labor family. So business family and labor family, and their fathers, grandfathers were enemies. But they were both devotees, and they joined together to purchase this building. So the newspapers were making a big deal. Anyway, they purchased this building, one of the most beautiful buildings we have in the Hare Krishna movement. In the floor, there's 24 karat gold in the floor. You can imagine the rest of the building. Every piece of this building is a work of art. So in the old original dining room, we opened a Govinda's restaurant. And Prabhupada wanted us to make it a cultural center. So we opened a cultural center, and we had, Prabhupada wanted these dioramas of Krishna Lila. So we had a whole diorama exhibit, and we had the grand opening. And so my family was one of the few people who had home computers in those days. They were not very common. We used them in the Gurukula. So the temple president said, can you hook up your monitor to get the news? We want to see the news of coverage of opening Govindas. So we did that. We had to hook up an antenna and everything to get the news broadcast. So there was one station, NBC, and they came, and they had the national branch and the local branch. Same station, but national branch and local branch, and they came to cover the news of the opening of Govindas. So where the temple is located, a very interesting location. It's right at the border of Detroit. So here's the city of Detroit, here's the border. And right next to Detroit is a place called Grosse Pointe Park. So Detroit itself, majority people there are African Americans, and a lot of crime. Most of the businesses had closed. And the main street right by our temple, Jefferson Avenue, it was full of broken windows and graffiti. But then you cross into Grosse Pointe Park, and Grosse Pointe Park is like Beverly Hills. You've heard of Beverly Hills?
Yes.
So Grosse Pointe Park is one of the wealthiest community. I think it's the second wealthiest community, at least in those days, after Beverly Hills. Huge mansions, and I really mean huge mansions, and huge lawns. It's bordering Lake St. Clair, a very beautiful area. Okay, you have the whole picture now? Okay, so I don't remember which, the national or the local, which did which. But one part of NBC, we saw their news, and they took pictures of Jefferson Avenue with the broken windows and the graffiti. And they said, the Hare Krishnas are doing wonderful work in this depressed area of the city by opening this restaurant and this cultural center, and they're going to revive the whole area. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Then the other branch of the same network They took pictures of Grosse Pointe Park. And they said, this is one of the nicest neighborhoods in America, and the Hare Krishnas are ruining it by commercializing their temple. Same news network, NBC. And they gave opposite perspectives. And I remember my husband and I are watching this, and we recorded it also, and we're like, ever since that day, I thought you cannot trust the news at all. Not at all. They're giving opposite conclusions. And now anybody can bring news. Anybody can start their own YouTube channel, their own blog, their own, and believe me, they're not all Narada Muni. 100% guaranteed. So, of course, we have to keep up with the news. Prabhupada writes there's no prohibition against hearing ordinary news. When we met with Srila Prabhupada in 1975 in the Brooklyn Temple in New York, so it was my husband, my father, our sleeping baby, and Gopal Krishna, he was Rahasya at that time. And my father was asking, why don't your disciples read the newspapers? And Prabhupada was saying, it's all the same news over and over and over again. There's a war. Oh, now there's another war. Oh, now there's another war, and there's another war. And there's this economic problem, and oh, now there's this economic problem, and there's this. And Prabhupada was saying how Gandhi in the newspaper had said, before you had a stand. I remember the other times you had a stand. What happened to that?
It's gone to the other temple.
It took a walk somewhere. It didn't come home. It was very inventive here. Yes, and Prabhupada was saying that Gandhi in the newspaper, he made some statement that I don't believe there was any person as Krishna who ever lived. And so he said, you read the newspapers, you're going to read so much rubbish. But Prabhupada did keep up with the news. You'll find in the Back to Godheads that he wrote in India before he came to America, often he was writing commentary on news. Very, very often. And Prabhupada, even in his purports, would sometimes refer to current events. But he didn't want us to be absorbed in this. So we have to know, Prabhupada said we should not be fools. Right? You shouldn't think World War II is still going on or something. You know, we should have some idea what's going on. But the problem is when we become absorbed, then it's very difficult to think of Krishna, right? Then we're just thinking about who's bombing who and who's winning what cricket game. But then there's some news that is enlightening also. Some of the news we get is actually enlightening and it's inspiring to know what is going on in the world. We used to have in ISKCON a Sankirtan newsletter where we would give, you know, this temple's doing so many books and so forth. So I want to look at, first of all, being a messenger. The role of Narada in this verse, in today's verse. So we have two main personalities in today's verse, Narada and Shiva. So first I want to look from the perspective of Narada being a news carrier. Because all of us are messengers of news sometimes, correct? Yes?
Yes.
And the next thing is from the position of Lord Shiva receiving the news. And then I want to look more specifically at Lord Shiva's response. So there are many devotees who have an eternal service of being a messenger. So in the spiritual world. So this is from Sri Rupa Goswami's Radha Krishna Ganamesh Deepika. So he lists the cowherd boys who particularly act as messengers. So I don't know that much about each of these. Maybe I'll meet them someday in the spiritual world. Visharada, Tunga, Vavaduka, Manoram, and Isisara are the leaders of the Gopa messengers. This is Sri Rupa Goswami writing this. They carry Krishna's messages to the gopis to arrange for pastimes and also to settle quarrels. So that can be, maybe it's some of your eternal service. Maybe some of you are cowherd boy messengers and you're delivering messages back and forth from Krishna to the gopis and settling the quarrels. that Krishna's gopi messengers, Purnamasi, Veera Devi, Vrinda Devi, Mamsi Devi, Nandimukhi Devi, I'm sure you've heard those personalities, yes? We're all familiar with Purnamasi and Vrinda Devi, at least, and Nandimukhi, very famous personalities in the Goswami's literature. Vrindarika Devi, Mela Devi, and Murali Devi are the leaders of Krishna's gopi messengers. Among all these gopi messengers, Vrinda Devi is the best. She's expert at arranging the meeting of Radha and Krishna, and she is fully conversant with the geography of Vrindavan, knowing the best places for the divine couple's rendezvous. So of course every day we are worshipping Vrinda Devi as Tulsi Maharani. So we also have many messengers for Krishna in the Shastra of Krishna's pastimes in the material world. So of course most famous is in today's verse, who is? Narada. And sometimes he stirs up trouble with his messages. Like today. In today's news in the Bhagavatam, he is stirring up a lot of trouble. He's giving a very heavy message that is going to lead to death and destruction. What other times does Narada bring messages? Can any of you think of some other times? To Kamsa. That was also a problem. He said to Kamsa, I'm going to tell you who you were in your last life. You know who Kamsa was in his last life? Kalinini. He said, in your last life, Lord Vishnu killed you, and he's going to do it again. And he sent the demigods to come. Any of Vasudev's children could be Vishnu. He was making a lot of trouble. He also came to Kamsa later, and he said, you know, all these demons you have sent to Vrindavan, Krishna killed all of them. And look, I'm going to tell you, Krishna is not Nanda's son, he's Vasudev's son. So that he brought at the end, and that's when Kamsa sent Akura to Vrindavan. So of course, Narada has many times that he brings messages. He meets Dhruva in the forest, and he brings message back to King Uttanapad, don't worry, your son is okay. Yes? Also, anyone think of any other messages from Narada? Yes, very nice. Okay, who are some other messengers in the Shastra? Uddhava. Yes, Uddhava brings the message from Krishna to the gopis, and then from the gopis back to Krishna. Some other examples. Akura. He's definitely a messenger, but he's also kind of an emissary, because he brings Krishna and Balaram back. The Brahmana. Now this Brahmana from Rukmini to Krishna, he's a very interesting personality. He was originally Visvamrita Muni. And Visvamrita Muni is a very interesting character. So first he was a Kshatriya. He's one of the rare examples of someone who in one life can change his varna. But it took him 60,000 years. So figure we cannot change our varna, whatever. By varna, I don't mean caste by birth. I mean our proclivities, our nature. Figure whatever nature you have in this life, that's your nature. But Vishwamrita, he was envious of the Vasistha. He was envious of the Vasistha's Kamadhenu, and he was envious of the Vasistha's weaponry. Vishwamrita wanted to become a Brahmana so he could get better weapons. That was his motive. And then he had, his dalliance with Menaka, and then he got angry at Ramba, and so many difficulties. And finally, he became Brahmana, and then a Maharshi, or Brahmarshi. He became eventually one of the 7 sages. But as Vishwamrita, he also became not only a Brahmana and a great Brahmana, but he became a pure Vaishnava. And he comes into Ram's Leela, and he acts as the matchmaker between Ram and Sita. He's also the matchmaker in Chaitanya Leela. He arranges the marriage of Lakshmi Priya and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he's the messenger matchmaker between Rukmini and Krishna. So he's both a messenger and a matchmaker, which is interesting because we think of a messenger as being like a servant, but as a matchmaker, that was more parental. So it's kind of a mixture of parental ras and servant ras. So he's a very interesting person. Anyone else in the Shastra who's a messenger? Hanuman. Hanuman. Of course, Ram sent Hanuman to be a messenger to Sita. So Hanuman delivers a message to Sita, but he also delivers a message to Ravana. He also delivers a message to Ravana, which was a very dangerous thing to do. Delivering the message to Sita was difficult because Sita didn't know who he was, ostensibly. But delivering to Ravana was very dangerous, almost got him killed, externally speaking. Yes. And then, of course, Hanuman sent a message to all of Lanka by burning Lanka. That was another kind of message. Okay, any other messengers? Huh? Krishna! Krishna becomes a messenger from the Pandavas to the Kauravas. Of course, they don't appreciate it. Like Ravana didn't appreciate Hanuman. And Duryodhana said, arrest him. Arrest this messenger. And then what did Krishna do when Duryodhana sent his guards to arrest him? He displayed a Virat Rupa. It's like, I don't think you can arrest me, I'm the universe. Arjuna brought the message of Krishna's disappearance back to his brothers. So we find many instances in the Shastra of messengers. So it's interesting though, like Vidura was hesitant to say about the disappearance of the Yadu dynasty because he didn't want to cause any disturbance. So in former times, if you were a messenger of good news, you got rewarded. Right? You brought good news, the person would give you some gift. And if you brought bad news, maybe your tail would be set on fire. So I'd like us just to think about this for a moment. A society where a messenger of good news is rewarded and a messenger of bad news may be punished. Always somebody doesn't put their phone on silent. Can everybody please put your phone on silent? And if you don't know how to do it, ask somebody next to you how to put your phone on silent. You can find some teenager and ask them. So the news is neutral. How am I at fault if I'm just a messenger? You understand? How is it my fault? If I'm the messenger that your father has died, I didn't kill him. I'm just the messenger. We have an expression, don't shoot the messenger. Yes? Speaking of news, we just had this thing in the United States where the head of one agency was reporting on statistics. They're just statistics, they're just facts. And the president's like, I don't like these facts. You lose your job. This is called shooting the messenger. But if you do think about it also, if you're in a society where the messenger of good news is rewarded and the messenger of bad news is punished in some way, then you're going to be inclined not to give bad news. Am I correct? Yeah. So this is going to cut down on a lot of gossip. Because most of our gossip, my dear friends, is bad news. Have you noticed that? Mostly. Do you know what this is? Do you know this? It's usually something bad. Oh, I heard that these people got a divorce and these people didn't. So maybe I don't think we should be shooting messengers. But maybe we can think like this. Can I be a messenger of good news? Can I be a messenger of things that will actually benefit others? Also, we should be very careful only to give accurate news, not spreading rumors. Oh, I heard this. Oh, where did you hear it from? Oh, I heard this from this person, that person. And you can ruin people's lives like this. I've seen this happen in our Hare Krishna movement. You know, somebody says something and it's not true, and then someone else repeats it, and someone else repeats it, and someone else repeats it. and then it takes on its own life. And everybody believes it. So we should be very careful that we are accurate news sources, that we're not just repeating things without checking. I had an instance many years ago in Soho Street Temple in London. So one devotee asked a question. He said, why are only 10% of Prabhupada's disciples active in ISKCON? I said, where are you getting this news? Where is this number? And what do you mean active in ISKCON? What is your definition of active in ISKCON? They're coming every day for Mangalarti, they come for Janmashtami. What does this mean? And then I talked for 20 minutes about how we should be careful about what is our news. And then after speaking for 20 minutes about this, he asked me the same question. And then I asked my god sister Mahamaya, she keeps a record of all the Prabhupada's disciples. And I said, you know, how do you define active in ISKCON and what percentage? She says, oh, it's about 1/3 who are still very actively involved in ISKCON. Of course, many have died. So that has to be taken every week. Some of god brother, god sister of mine, they're leaving this world. But so we have to be careful we don't pull numbers out of the sky. I was also at a festival in Lithuania where most of the classes were in Russian. So Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj was speaking in Russian, it was being translated into English. And he was talking about keeping marriages together. And he said, seems like in Russia, after 2-3 years, everybody gets divorced. So he was not giving a statistic. You understand? We may speak like this casually. Oh, practically everybody's doing this, but it's not like research. So this was being translated into English, and one of my godbrothers and I were listening to the English. And then later that day, this godbrother, he's giving a class, and he says, so why all the Russian devotees are getting divorced after 2 years? And I said to him, Prabhu, this is not true. Where are you getting this? Oh, Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj said this in his class. Then we talked to Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj. He said, I was using hyperbole. I wasn't giving a firm statistic. But then this got recorded. You know? Then it gets recorded, then it's on the internet, and then everybody's seeing, oh, now I know this thing. When I did my research in 2005 about all the devotee schools all over the world, and I took not just a sample, I got, any of you who are social scientists, I actually did a census. We got a response, over 90% of all of the teachers in all of the ISKCON schools all over the world. And one of the questions that I asked is, are you married, are you single, are you divorced? I combined divorced and widowed. Only 2% of the teachers were either divorced or widowed. Only 2%. And only 1.7% was on a second marriage after divorce or widowed. That's a very small number. And that was actual scientific research. And then people will just make up numbers out of the sky. And I'm like, where are you getting these numbers from? So please be very careful that we're giving messages accurately. All right, well now, what about how we respond to news? So now we're going to move from Narada to Shiva. How do we respond to news? So let's look at responses in the scriptures. So the gopis responded to Uddhava by sending another message back. So sometimes we can respond to messages by sending another message back. When Krishna got the message from the Brahmana, he took action. Like here we see Lord Shiva taking action. He took action. Of course, he took the action that he was asked to take. So Rukmini said, you please come kidnap me. And you please come kidnap me at this time, at this place. This is the schedule. And there's going to be a little gap in the schedule where you can come in and kidnap. So Krishna did that. Of course, Krishna did that without sending a return message back. The time was very short. And so then Rukmini was wondering, you know how sometimes you send a message and you don't get a reply? Right? So it's like that. Rukmini sent the message and then no reply, no reply, no reply, no reply. Did Krishna get my message? couldn't even see if it went through. You know, nowadays you can see if someone read it. She couldn't even see, did Krishna get it? Maybe the Brahmana, something happened on the way, he didn't get there, maybe Krishna isn't going to take me. She was in so much anxiety. And then she saw the Brahmana, and she's like, oh, he's come back. And she had all these auspicious signs, and she offered him her obeisances. Yes. We also have the time there was a message came from the Pandavas to Krishna about attending the Rajasuya. And so then Krishna's response was he sent back a message, actually, I'm coming, and then he took his whole retinue. That was a big deal. 16,108 queens with so many children from each queen. I don't know if they already had all 10, 11 of their children by that time. And then all the teachers for all the children and all the people to do the laundry and all the, imagine how much laundry they had to do. And all the people doing all the cooking. And they came in this huge procession from Dwarka to Hastinapur. Probably to Indraprastha at that time. Then we had the messenger who came from the kings that Jarasandha had kidnapped. And then Krishna sent a message back. This I find also interesting. Krishna sent a message back saying, yes, I will save him. But first he did the Rajasuya thing with Maharaj Yudhisthira at the suggestion of Uddhava, which meant he had to bring this whole retinue from Dwarka to Indraprastha. That must have taken some time. Even just to organize it must have taken some time. Right? I know Radhanath Swami is going to be organizing a yatra in Govardhan, 10,000 people. And that takes a lot of, there was a video made, I don't know if any of you saw it, talking about good news, about how they organize, how Radhanath Swami's disciples organize these yatras. Maybe some of you saw that? With all the cooking and, did any of you see that? Oh, it's wonderful. It was done by non-devotees came and did it. Something with National Geographic, I think. Very, very wonderful. But how they're actually planning the whole year and how much it must have taken to organize the trip. And then when they got there, then they sent out the brothers to all the kings to see if they would submit. That must have taken many months. And then they go and fight with Jarasandha. That took another month. Then there's the Rajasuya. Then Krishna went, right, no, he freed the kings when they went to kill Jarasandha. So at least a year happened between the time Krishna sent the message and he actually, Bhima actually killed Jarasandha. And then the Pandavas also, when they got this message that Krishna had left, then they said, okay, this is a good opportunity. Now we're going to take Vanaprastha, we'll install Pariksit, and we'll take Vanaprastha. When Kamsa got the message from Narada, he began to persecute the devotees. He began to create problems among the devotees and try to kill Krishna. We're going to contrast this response to Lord Shiva's response. So Lord Shiva's response is he's going to send his associates to the yajna he's going to try to have them destroy the yajna and kill Daksha. That's his specific response. And he has here unlimited anger. So the result of Lord Shiva's response is that Daksha gets his head cut off, and the demon that Lord Shiva creates throws Daksha's head into the fire. And I don't know how Daksha survived without his head for a while, but he ended up getting a goat's head. Lord Brahma said he could get a goat's head. So he had to go the rest of his life looking like a goat. Pretty embarrassing, your whole life you look like a goat. Yes. And Sati had to take birth again because she's Lord Shiva's eternal consort. So of course that wasn't the result exactly of Lord Shiva, that was the result of Daksha, but she took birth again. And ultimately the result of Shiva's response. So the immediate result was the destruction of the sacrifice, the beheading of Daksha. That was the immediate result. But the long-term result was actually the peaceful restoration of proper sacrifices and the rebirth of Sati in another form. Because everyone went to pacify Lord Shiva, and then they went to pacify Lord Brahma, and everything was settled. And then there was another yajna where Lord Shiva was invited and the Lord appeared. So Lord Shiva's response, which was a response of unbounded apara, Anger. What is it? Krodam aparam. Anger that has no limit. So immediately there was destruction, but in the long range there was balance. Whereas Kamsa's response to the messengers is also unbounded anger, maybe not quite unbounded, only Lord Shiva may be unbounded. But the result of Kamsa's behavior was just destruction. Kamsa wasn't trying to restore anything. Krishna restored, but Kamsa didn't restore. So this anger is a very strange emotion. It's a very strange emotion. Here it says Lord Shiva becomes angry to reply to an insult. My dear friends, usually when we are angry it is because we think we have been insulted in some way or threatened in some way. Now, I know we don't believe that. I know we believe that the reason we get angry is on principle. Someone's doing something unjust, something's happening that's not right. And both things were operating here in this Leela. Daksha had done something sinful, but Shiva was also insulted. And I will give you a guarantee that 99% of the time when we get angry is because we have felt insulted, or we have felt threatened in some way. And what's being threatened is our ahankar. That's what's being threatened. Because the soul cannot be burnt or dried or withered by the wind. The soul is eternal. The soul can't even be killed. So the way this works, the way anger works, if you want to think it on a physiological level, so the way our brains and bodies are engineered, if our brain senses that there's some threat to our survival, let's say there's a pack of dogs barking at you in a narrow alley, so your brain will say, danger, 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 danger. And it sets off what's called the sympathetic nervous system, which floods your body with energy, adrenaline, cortisol. It sends blood into your arms and legs. Well, it's getting that blood from somewhere. Where is it getting it from? It's getting it from your brain. It's getting it from your digestion. So when we think there's danger, our digestion pretty much gets put on pause. Our immune system gets put on pause. And our ability to think clearly changes. We get a very narrow focus. Deal with dogs. We're no longer thinking about anything else. We're not thinking about the money we owe somebody, or our problems at work, or the fight we had with our wife. That's all gone. And we're also not able to think philosophically. Just deal with this. And we're programmed biologically to fight. So maybe we're going to take a stick and we're going to fight, right? And we'll take a rock and throw it, we're going to fight. Or we're going to go away. Now, it's not a good idea to run away from a dog, but maybe we'll back up slowly, or maybe we'll just freeze. Another response is what they call fawn, where you submit. Oh, nice doggy, nice doggy. We have the same response, biologically, physiologically, if people insult us, especially if the insult comes from someone who has some power over us. Because we are social animals, it's very difficult for us to exist, to live on our own. Without other humans, it's very hard to get food and shelter. So if somebody says something that we interpret as an insult, our brain thinks that's like a barking dog. And that's why if someone says something rude to you, or inconsiderate, or unfair, you get this rush of anger. Have you ever wondered why does that happen? Bhagavatam said it's like it falls out of the sky, because the brain is programmed to respond this fast, because maybe you have to. So if someone insults us, and we lose our intelligence, We just focus on dealing with this threat. But all of that is based on the body and the mind. I, the soul, am not threatened. I can't be threatened. So because I identify with the body and the mind, when my physiological systems set out this danger system, I think it's me. And I don't know what you say in Hindi or Bengali or Tamil, but in English, we even say, I am angry, as if it's my identity. Someone says, who are you? I say, Urmila. I am Urmila. I am angry, as if I'm just anger. Now, it says in the Bhagavatam that Lord Shiva is the ego of the Lord. The Lord also has an ego, and that ego is personified in Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva has the same response that when he's insulted, he becomes angry. Of course, his anger has no limit. My anger has a limit. Even it was said about Hiranyakashipu that he stayed angry his whole life. And this was very unusual. Most of us don't stay angry our whole life. If we did, we will end up with some kind of disease, by the way. Because anger is stopping digestion, the immune system, so it will cause all kinds of inflammation and problem in our bodies if we're just angry. So we might say, oh, Krishna has an ego like me. No, Krishna doesn't have an ego like me. Lord Shiva, as the personification of Krishna's ego, is not like my ahankar. It's not like my bodily identification. Why am I identifying with this body? Because I want to enjoy the material world. I want to be the Lord of the material world, and the only way I can be the Lord of the material world is to have a body. Like if you want to master a computer game, you have to have a character in the game, correct? I mean, I never played these things, but I've seen people playing them. So if you want to master the game, you have to create, I think they even call them avatars sometimes. You have to create this animated thing in the game. Without that, you cannot interact with the game. So without this body, I can't interact with the world. I can't try to be the master of the world. My whole concept of I am the enjoyer, I am Krishna's competitor, I'm going to enjoy without Krishna, I'm going to enjoy Krishna's energy without Krishna. That requires a body. Is everybody clear with this? So when I want to defend this body, what am I defending? I'm defending my desire to be an independent enjoyer, and that's my false ego that I'm defending. So therefore this anger is all coming from our false ego. If we can understand this, it's so important. Therefore when Krishna describes the demoniac qualities, after describing so many demoniac qualities, then he says, Trividam narakashedam dvaramasanamatmaha kama kroda satalo bastasmare tvartmayam prajet. At least this lust, anger, and greed, they're going to take you to hell. Lord Shiva, as the Lord's ego, is completely different. The Lord's ego is Bhoktaram Yagatabasam, Sarvalok Maheshwara, Suridam Sarvabhutana. That's the Lord's ego. If you ask the Lord, who are you? He's actually the enjoyer of everything. I am a false enjoyer. He is a real enjoyer. He is actually the master. I am a false master. Just like I'm staying in a home. I'm staying in a family's home. They are actually the masters of the home. I am not. I am just a guest. I cannot say, oh, now I'm here. I am the enjoyer. Do you understand? So they're my hosts. They want me to enjoy the house in relation to them. They give me a place to sleep, and they say, did you sleep well? And if I say yes, they are happy. But if I say, oh, I like this bed very much, I'm taking it with me, then they're not going to be happy. So if we're seeing our body as belonging to Krishna, if I'm seeing the world as belonging to Krishna, if I see everything as seva, then I'm not going to be offended. then I'm going to be Trinadapi Sunichena Turi Vasishina Amanina Dana Kirtanya Sadhari. I'm going to be able to give respect to everyone and not care. Someone respects me, someone insults me, doesn't matter. As Krishna says, honor, dishonor, fame and infamy, happiness and distress. I won't react like this. And if the body reacts like this, I'll just say, oh, interesting, my body's reacting like this. It's not me. What's my service? But Krishna is actually the enjoyer. He's actually the master, and he's the enjoyer and master as a benevolent friend. So when Krishna gets angry, here through his ego as Lord Shiva, it's for everyone's benefit. When I'm getting angry, it's for my false ego. 99% of the time. 1% maybe we're actually angry in service. Very rare. If we're angry in service, then we're going to feel purified and enlivened by that anger. That's happened to me maybe twice. When we're angry out of false ego, we feel polluted. Correct? So what should we do with this anger? We have anger in response to messages. Whatever kind of messages we're reading on the news, this politician's doing that, this, right? Or we have a personal message that causes us to be angry. Step back and say, this is not me. This is not me. I don't have to act on this anger. I don't have to go try to destroy everybody's yajnas. But neither should I repress the anger. That doesn't work either. It will come out after some time. But simply let it pass as rivers go into the ocean without being affected. So this is extremely important. Our responses to messages should be, how can I use this in Krishna's service? So we can be messengers in this world of the news of Goloka Vrindavan. That is the best news that we can give people. Not to spend all of our time just being messengers of this and that in the world. But let's be messengers on behalf of Krishna. Let's take the message, like that young man was saying, how Prabhupada traveled the world in order to bring Krishna Bhakti to others. Transcendental salesperson. So let us be that kind of messengers. Let's be messengers that really help people in their lives. And let's respond to news with a cool head. We cannot stop the chemical reactions in our body. That's not possible. But we don't have to identify with them. We don't have to hate them. We just let them be, and we let things settle before we respond. Not immediate responses in the heat of anger, which then we regret later. And our responses to news should always be ultimately to restore balance. As Lord Shiva is ultimately trying to restore balance. How can I bring peace? I mean, Sati, of course, she tried to bring peace, and she, as Prabhupada said, she wasn't successful. We're not, and Krishna tried to bring peace and wasn't successful, even Krishna wasn't successful. So it's not that we're always going to be successful. We can't control the result. But we should really try to respond to things in a way to restore the balance and to keep peace. So I've gone almost to the end. We can have maybe one or two questions. Do we have a traveling mic?
Thank you very much for your wonderful enlightening subject, which is a response to the message. Now my question is, how does the three modes act with the response of an individual?
Well, the physiological response in the body, you could say, is neutral. The natural biochemical response to perceived danger is neutral. How we choose to respond to that depends on what guna is predominating in our life. So if people are primarily in tamagun, they are going to respond to any perceived insult with great anger and great vengeance. Of course, Shiva is also in charge of tamagun. He's also dealing with tamagun. So tamagun, if you just accidentally bump into me, I may punch you. I really over-respond. So that's tamagun. In tamagun, my threat, what would you say, tolerance is very low. My insult tolerance is very low. Tiny little things will set me off. Bhakti-tirtha Swami used to give this analogy. So if you're carrying a cup of orange juice and someone bumps into you and you spill orange juice, what caused you to spill orange juice? You could say someone bumping into me, but you could also say the fact that I have orange juice in my cup. If I had an empty cup, nothing would spill. If I had water, I would spill water. So when we're full of tamagun, some slight insult, we're already carrying all this anger all the time and all this defensiveness. Our identity with the body and the mind is very strong in tamagun. So we react way out of proportion. Like there's a mosquito when we send an atom bomb. Then it should go up through the gunas. In Rajagun, not as much. In Rajagun, there's more sense of dharma. In Tamagun, you will do something dharmic only if it's easy. But in Rajagun, you want to do something dharmic for prestige. You're like, well, I need to act properly so people will think well of me. So I'll be in the history books. So then it's a little more careful, and you're more able to tolerate insults and difficulty. Your threshold is higher in Rajagun. That you will think, what is the honorable response? What is the dharmic response? For which people will say, Jai, Urmila, you gave such a dharmic response. So that is in Rajagun. Then as you go to Sattvagun, your threshold becomes much higher. In Sattvagun, you don't identify much with this world. A little bit, but not so much. So people in Sattvagun can tolerate quite a lot before they become angry. And people in Sattvagun's mood, it's also ahankar. But in Sattvagun, people's mood is, I am equipoised. In Tamagun, it's I'm ready for a fight. In Rajagun, is I am dharmic. I am honorable. I am reputable. In Sattvagun is I am spiritual. I am balanced. I am in harmony. I can tolerate. But even in Sattvagun, because you're still having this I am this in this world, still it can be shaken. You follow? And so we see even these great brahmanas and rishis, sometimes they curse. There was that one rishi, he was insulted, he felt insulted by Indrajumna Maharaj, when Indrajumna Maharaj was in Samadhi. I forget the name of the sage. And he felt insulted and he said, you become an elephant. And that was Gajendra. And when those in Sattvagun, when they get angry, whoa, because they have all this power from Sattva. And so when they get angry, their curses are very devastating. Now those who are in bhakti, they don't have any ahankara. I'm Krishna's servant, that's all. I don't have anything to defend. Now I can defend Krishna's honor as a servant, but I have to be careful that I'm actually doing that. But I have no false ego to defend. So they don't have a threshold. That's why we say, that's why Prahlad Maharaj says that the non-devotees have no good qualities, because they have good qualities up to a point. And depending on their position in the gunas, once they feel threatened enough, they will throw away all their good qualities. So, but above the notes, no threshold. fearless. Is that all right? So we should end here? Yes?
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. So anything good in this presentation, this is Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas in the Shastra. Any mistakes on mine? So from my mistakes, either please ignore them or correct them, and I hope that you can take the good. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.